The snow was falling hard on Christmas Eve when I saw her. She was sitting on a frozen bench outside the closed doors of St. Mary's Shelter in downtown Chicago. Her thin coat was soaked through. Her hands were shaking, and her eyes, when she looked up at me, held something I'll never forget: complete emptiness. I'm Marcus Williams. I built a tech company from nothing. Forbes put my face on their cover twice, but standing there in that alley, none of that mattered. What mattered was the woman in front of me and the tears frozen on her cheeks. "They kicked me out," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible over the wind. "They said I broke the rules, but I didn't. I swear I didn't. I crouched down, my expensive wool coat touched the dirty snow, and I didn't care. What's your name?" She hesitated, like she'd forgotten, like nobody had asked her that in a very long time. "Clara," she finally said. "Clara Mitchell." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my gloves. I handed them to her without thinking. "Clara, I'm going to help you. Can you stand?" She looked at me like I was speaking another language. Trust wasn't something she had anymore. I could see that clearly. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You don't know me." I didn't have a good answer. I still don't. Something in her face reminded me of my mother, the same tired eyes, the same quiet dignity even when the world was crushing her. "Because it's Christmas Eve," I said simply. "And you're freezing." She let me help her up. Her legs wobbled. She weighed almost nothing. I walked her to my car, a black Mercedes parked 2 blocks away. My driver, Henry, stepped out immediately. "Sir, we're taking her somewhere warm," I said. "Now." Henry didn't ask questions. That's why I trusted him. Inside the car, I turned the heat up high. Clara sat rigid against the leather seat, her body still trembling. She wouldn't look at me. "The shelter," I said carefully. "Why did they say you broke the rules?" She closed her eyes. A single tear escaped down her cheek. "They found a photograph in my bag of my daughter Emily. She's 7. They said I was hiding something. They said I lied on my intake form." Her voice cracked. "I wasn't hiding anything. I was protecting her." "Protecting her from what?" Clara didn't answer. Her hands gripped the worn fabric of her coat. Her knuckles were white. We drove through the snow-covered streets of Chicago. Christmas lights blinked in every window. Families gathered behind frosted glass. The world was celebrating, and this woman had nothing. I told Henry to take us to my penthouse. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror but said nothing. When we arrived, Clara stood in the lobby and stared at the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the 20-foot Christmas tree decorated with gold ornaments. "This is where you live," she whispered. "Yes. I don't belong here." I turned to face her. Something tightened in my chest. "Clara, nobody gets to decide where you belong. Not anymore." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something flicker, something that might have been hope, or maybe it was fear. I didn't know her story yet. I didn't know the darkness she was running from. I didn't know that helping her would change everything I thought I understood about power, about justice, about what it truly means to lose everything. But I was about to find out. I gave Clara the guest room on the 42nd floor. It had a view of Lake Michigan, a king-sized bed, and a bathroom bigger than most apartments. She stood in the doorway, afraid to step inside. "There are clean clothes in the closet," I said. "Take a hot shower, rest, we'll talk in the morning." She nodded slowly, but before I could leave, she spoke. "You're going to want answers." "Yes, and when you hear them, you're going to wish you never stopped for me." I paused. Her words hung in the air like smoke. "Try me," I said quietly. "I've heard a lot of stories, not like mine." She closed the door, and I stood in the hallway for a long time, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her face. The way she flinched when Henry opened the car door, the way she apologized for existing, who had broken this woman so completely. The next morning was Christmas. I found Clara already awake, sitting by the window. She was wearing one of the sweaters I'd left for her. It was too big, made her look even smaller. "Coffee?" I offered. She shook her head. I sat across from her. The city sparkled below us, covered in fresh snow. "Tell me about Emily." Clara's breath caught. "She's the reason I'm still alive." "Where is she now?" Clara's hands began to shake. She pressed them together, trying to steady herself. "With him, with my ex-husband, Richard." She said his name like it burned her throat. "He took her from me 2 years ago. He has money. He has lawyers. He has connections. I had nothing." "What happened?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to speak. She told me about the marriage, how Richard seemed perfect at first, charming, successful, adored by everyone, how the abuse started slowly, a comment here, an accusation there, then the isolation, the control, the fear. "He never hit me where anyone could see," she said. "He was too smart for that, but he made me believe I was worthless, that I was crazy, that no one would ever believe me." Her voice was steady now, cold. "When I finally tried to leave, he destroyed me. He told the court I was unstable. He had doctors on his payroll who wrote reports. He had witnesses who lied, and I lost everything, my home, my reputation, my daughter." I felt something dark rising in my chest, anger pure and sharp. You've been on the streets ever since? For 8 months, I couldn't find work, couldn't get housing. Richard made sure of that. He wanted me broken. He wanted me gone. And Emily? Clara's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She thinks I abandoned her. That's what he tells her, that Mommy didn't love her enough to stay. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the frozen city. What's Richard's last name? Porter, Richard Porter. The name hit me like a punch. I knew that name. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. Richard Porter was one of the most powerful real estate developers in the Midwest. He donated to hospitals, built community centers, shaken hands with governors, and apparently he destroyed his wife's life without anyone noticing. Clara, I said slowly, do you still have proof, documents, medical records, anything? She looked up at me. I have everything, hidden safe. I've been waiting for someone to believe me. I believe you. The next 3 days changed everything. Clara led me to a storage unit in Gary, Indiana. It was small, rusted, forgotten. She'd paid for it with the last of her savings before she ended up on the streets. Inside were boxes, dozens of them. I documented everything, she said quietly. Every bruise, every threat, every lie he told, I knew one day I'd need it. I opened the first box, photographs, hospital records, text messages printed on paper, a journal filled with dates and detailed accounts. This wasn't just evidence, this was a weapon. Why didn't you use this in court? I asked. Clara sat on an old crate, her shoulders slumped. I tried. My lawyer was useless. Richard's team buried everything. They filed motions, delayed hearings, drained my money. By the end, I couldn't even afford to show up. I felt sick. The system had failed her completely. I made a phone call. My attorney, Catherine Wells, answered on the second ring. Marcus, it's the day after Christmas. What's going on? I need you to look into someone, Richard Porter. Silence on the line. The Richard Porter? Yes. Marcus, that man has an army of lawyers. What are you getting into? Something that matters. I told Catherine to meet me the next morning. Then I sat with Clara in that cold storage unit and I listened. She told me about Emily's laugh, the way she used to draw pictures of butterflies, how she'd climb into Clara's bed during thunderstorms and whisper, I'm not scared, Mommy, I just want to protect you. She told me about the night Richard threw her out, how Emily screamed and reached for her, how she could still hear that scream in her sleep. I've built companies. I've closed billion-dollar deals. I've faced hostile boardrooms without blinking. But sitting there listening to this woman's pain, I felt powerless. And then I felt something else, determination. Catherine reviewed the evidence the next day. Her face went pale. This is damning, she said. If this goes public, Richard Porter is finished. Then let's make it public. Catherine shook her head slowly. Marcus, he'll come after you. He has resources, influence. He'll try to destroy you too. I looked at Clara, who was sitting in the corner of my office, watching us. He already destroyed someone who had nothing, I said. Let him try me. We built a case quietly, carefully. Catherine brought in investigators, forensic accountants, journalists she trusted. Every day more truth emerged. Richard had been embezzling from his own charities. He'd bribed officials. He'd threatened former employees into silence. His empire was built on fear and fraud, and at the center of it all was a little girl who missed her mother. On New Year's Eve, Clara and I sat on my balcony watching fireworks explode over the city. She was quiet. Do you think this will work? She asked. Yes. What if it doesn't? What if he wins again? I turned to look at her, the colors reflected in her eyes, red, gold, white. Then we'll fight again and again until it's over. She smiled. It was small, fragile, but it was real. You know, Marcus, I used to believe in good people, then I stopped. For a long time, I stopped. And now, she looked at me. Now I'm starting to believe again. The fireworks faded. The new year arrived, and somewhere across the city, Richard Porter had no idea what was coming. The story broke on January 15th. Catherine's journalist contact published everything. The documents, the testimony, the photographs. Within hours, Richard Porter's name was everywhere. But he didn't go down quietly. His lawyers held a press conference. They called Clara a liar. They called me an opportunist. They painted us as villains trying to destroy an innocent man. Clara watched the press conference from my living room. Her hands trembled. They're twisting everything, she whispered, just like before. I sat beside her. This time is different. How do you know? Because this time people are listening, and they were. Within 48 hours, 3 more women came forward, former employees, former partners, each with their own stories of abuse and intimidation. Then a former accountant released financial records, showing Richard had funneled millions into offshore accounts. Then a senator who'd received his donations called for an investigation. The tide was turning, but Richard wasn't finished. He showed up at my office unannounced. Security called me and I told them to send him up. I wanted to see his face. He walked in like he owned the building, expensive suit, perfect hair, that politician's smile that had fooled everyone for years. "Marcus Williams," he said smoothly. "The billionaire with a bleeding heart, how touching." I didn't stand up. "What do you want, Richard?" He sat across from me uninvited, his smile never wavered. "I want you to understand something. This crusade of yours, it ends now. You drop this and we both walk away clean. And if I don't," his eyes hardened, "then I'll bury you, your company, your reputation, everything you've built. I've destroyed bigger men than you." I leaned forward. "You're not talking to a scared woman with no resources anymore, Richard. You're talking to me, and I don't scare easily." His mask slipped just for a second. I saw the monster underneath. "You'll regret this." "I doubt it." He stood up, straightened his jacket. "Where's Clara? I know she's here somewhere. She's none of your concern. She's my wife. She's nothing to you. You made sure of that." He smiled again, that cold, empty smile. "This isn't over." He walked out, and I sat there, my heart pounding, knowing that the real battle was just beginning. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring at a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "He came here," she said. "He's not going to stop. Neither are we." She looked at me. Her eyes were red. "Marcus, you've done so much already. You don't have to keep fighting. This isn't your war." I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "Clara, I grew up with nothing. My mother worked 3 jobs. She sacrificed everything so I could have a chance. And you know what I learned from her?" "What?" "That people who have power are supposed to use it to help people who don't. That's the whole point." She was quiet. "I spent years building wealth," I continued, "making money, chasing success, but I never asked myself what it was for until now." Clara reached out and touched my hand. Her fingers were cold. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing me when no one else would. Thank me when Emily's home." Her eyes filled with tears. "You really think that's possible?" I squeezed her hand. "I know it is." And in that moment, I made myself a promise. No matter what it took, I was going to bring that little girl home. The court date was set for February 12th. Catherine and her team had built an airtight case. Witness testimony, financial records, medical evidence, everything pointed to one truth. Richard Porter was a fraud, an abuser, and an unfit parent, but nothing prepared me for seeing Emily. She walked into the courtroom holding Richard's hand. 7 years old, brown hair in pigtails, those same eyes as her mother. Clara gasped beside me, her whole body tensed. "That's her," she breathed. "That's my baby." Emily looked around the courtroom, confused, scared. When her eyes landed on Clara, something flickered, recognition. Richard noticed. He leaned down and whispered something in Emily's ear. The little girl's face went blank. My blood boiled. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Catherine presented evidence. Richard's lawyers objected. The judge listened. And then Clara took the stand. She told her story, every painful detail. Her voice shook, but she never stopped. She looked at Emily while she spoke. "I never abandoned you," Clara said directly to her daughter. "I never stopped fighting for you. I never stopped loving you. Every single day I thought about you. Every single night I prayed I'd see you again." Emily's lip trembled. Richard's lawyer tried to discredit Clara, called her unstable, called her a liar. But this time the truth was louder. The judge recessed for deliberation. We waited in the hallway. Clara paced. I watched. 2 hours later we were called back in. The judge spoke slowly, carefully. "Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that Mr. Richard Porter engaged in a pattern of abuse, manipulation, and fraud. Custody of the minor child, Emily Porter, is hereby transferred to her mother, Clara Mitchell, effective immediately." Clara collapsed into her chair, sobbing, shaking. I stood there, frozen, watching as Emily broke free from Richard and ran across the courtroom. "Mommy!" Clara caught her, held her so tight. Their cries echoed through the room. Richard was escorted out by federal agents, charges pending, his empire crumbling. I stepped back. This wasn't my moment. It was theirs. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but I kept Clara and Emily shielded. We slipped into my car and drove away. That night they stayed in the guest room together. I heard them laughing through the door. I heard Emily asking 1,000 questions. I heard Clara reading her a bedtime story. I went out onto the balcony and looked at the city. 3 months ago, I was just another billionaire, successful, empty, going through the motions. Then I saw a woman on a bench and everything changed. Clara joined me an hour later. Emily was finally asleep. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't have to." "I do. You gave me my life back. You gave me my daughter back. You gave me hope when I had none." I turned to look at her, the city lights reflected in her eyes. "You gave me something too." "Clara, what?" "A reason." She smiled, soft, real. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild, both of us." She nodded, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel empty. It felt full. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for believing in a story about a woman who had nothing, a man who had everything, and the moment when their worlds collided. Stories like this happen every day. People fighting battles no one sees. People waiting for someone to believe them. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's someone you know. Either way, don't give up. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.